Joining us now in this weekend's attempted assassination of former President Trump at a campaign event in Pennsylvania, former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. We're slowly getting away from the actual event, Mr. Speaker, and maybe there is some positive things, as it happens sometimes, that could come out of this. I know that you've already weighed in, and you kind of got grilled on January 6th and the rhetoric that led up to that. And we know full well that it's a heated environment. President Trump, they used to be lock her up, all that kind of stuff that takes us to a certain place. But neither side is blameless. And I retweeted this out from Ian Al-Hersey over the week. I thought this succinctly sort of described what President Trump had to put up with. Here's the quote: that the argument that Trump posed a Hitler-level threat to American democracy can be traced back to the first outbreak of TDS among left-leaning journalists in 2016. What made the argument so malignant was that it justified all means possible to disrupt Trump's presidency, and it goes on from there. But a lot of that platform was almost adopted by President Biden in terms of how he was going to campaign for this next election. We need to bring it down on both sides. You agree with that?
I agree 100%. Both sides need to pull back. But I'd also say not just the candidates. Candidates use that rhetoric because it works in campaigns, a negative campaign. I think all of us as Americans hated what we saw happen this week, an attack on whether you support President Trump or not, but actually killing somebody in an audience because they went to participate on something they believed in. But President Trump came very close to being killed. But you could have Paul Pelosi, you could have Giffords, who was hurt, you could have Steve Scalise. I personally have somebody that tried to kill my son waiting for trial. He was in jail prior. He tried to kill President Bush before. I mean, this is, when the rhetoric rises all the way around, it becomes a real problem. And I think everybody should take a moment that somebody could have a difference of opinion of you. Let's respect that. That doesn't mean they're less American. That doesn't mean anything else. But the uniqueness of America is our ability to have a debate. And I think we just have taken it a little too far, that everybody should take a deep breath and everybody should look within themselves. There's enough blame to go around for everyone. But you raised a lot of those, and even Biden saying a bullseye 2 weeks ago. That type of stuff should pull back. Respect the difference of opinion and have the debate, and let's talk about issues, because there is a real contrast in this campaign of the direction that America can go based upon where you vote.
I mean, there's still time to talk about issues, Mr. Speaker, but that's been...
There's a lot of time left.
But that hasn't been what we have been focusing on, which is probably what more Americans are more concerned with or would like to talk about.
Yeah, and what we should really think about, our whole design of government is you've got to have compromise. You don't change your principles, but you're going to have compromise. I mean, if you take your viewers, every day they're making a business agreement or a business deal where they want both sides to win. In politics today, we think if you come to an agreement, one side has to win, but the other side has to be destroyed. That's not the case. If America wins, both sides can win at the same time by keeping your principles. And I think looking at that, having that discussion going forward, be much more positive. I think both campaigns are going to do this. I mean, I'm looking at President Biden resetting his campaign. That was only the third Oval Office address. It took him 10 days before he addressed the nation. It wasn't Oval Office with October 7th hit, right? So this is a moment in time. You're not going to have any more Democrats come out and say he shouldn't be the nominee. So we know this is going to be a race between President Trump and President Biden. We know there's a great contrast when it comes to the border, when it comes to spending, when it comes to economics and inflation, when it comes to foreign policy. And that's the debate we should be talking about. That's the debate we should have. And you could have difference of opinion on that, but you can respect the person's position and see if you can win the case.
Can you give us any insider color on what you expect former President Trump to talk about? And whether the speech was really was ripped up, the previous one, and that I'm not come to Jesus moment, but some type of when you go through something like that, I could definitely see he could appeal for unity. Do you know whether that, if you talked to him, or do you expect him to?
I talked to him yesterday. I think you talked to him a little bit after me. I mean, think about it. it's less than an inch from coming from his entire life and seeing somebody who lost their life sitting in that rally. I mean, he cares about all that. But the other thing you really look at is would you handle a situation like that? I mean, the sheer leadership of what he's shown of taking that moment and not looking at himself but looking for the rest of the crowd is important. But I think what you're going to have, these conventions usually raise the temperature on both sides because you really want to make that case. You've got just your party around and you're getting the fever. I think that is going to be pulled back some. I think President Trump is President Trump. I mean, yesterday when I talked to him, even though he has this life experience, just the way he was able to do it. I mean, what he did to me, he says he's talking about the ear and what he's learning about. There's more blood within the ear, and he goes, right. Kevin, you'll understand this because you got big, beautiful ears, you know?
Yeah, and he did. Because I didn't know the ear really, if anything's going to bleed, it's going to be the ear. I know, I heard that. And that is true, though. There's a lot of vascularity into the ear. It bleeds like crazy. Yeah,
but the other thing, too, is he heard the bullet. I mean, he heard it coming after you, watched it. And, I mean, that is life-changing. But I think the reflection of what he has, I think the tone may be a little different. But he has been very direct in what he wants to do in securing the border. We've watched what he did in the job 4 years ago, right? And I think he's better prepared for the job now. We've watched this campaign be more disciplined. We've watched how he's been able to handle this. So I think he will get it better.
You're always so busy. You always got, places to go, people to see. But do you think it's going to be President Biden will definitely be the nominee when it's all said and done?
1,000%. I think President Biden's going to use this to reset his campaign, pull the ads off, do a Oval Office address. He's been in office for 4 years, and this is only the third one. Take this moment in time. There's not one Democrat that's come out after this. I don't see where they can go. There's only so many weeks before the convention. He's locked the nomination down. But now they're in a weaker position. Democrats themselves had fought among themselves, weakening him. But the other thing, too, is America has lowered their expectation of President Biden. So they think he did a really good job in the speech last night because he only messed up a little bit. He still has another debate to go. We want to make sure there's still a long time with this campaign, and people will have a certain emotion right now, but will they have that same emotion 2 weeks out before the election? That's the real question, and that's not just for the candidates, that's for all of us as Americans.